Welcome to Creativity Works Moving Forward. I'm Bonnie North, the arts producer for Lake Effect on Milwaukee Public Radio. We're in Rumble here at Harley-Davidson Museum, and you're watching a live stream of the Moving Forward event produced by Milwaukee Public Television. The Moving Forward event is a culmination of a year-long project undertaken by the Cultural Alliance of Milwaukee and the Greater Milwaukee Committee. The project examined and evaluated the economic significance of the creative industries in our region. Including the event this evening, Creativity Works has made contact with almost 2,000 people in the region through focus groups, leadership meetings, one-on-one interviews, public events, and surveys. Plus, they also put out a weekly e-blast, which goes to more than 1,400 people. You're watching this on the Creativity Works website, which is www.creativityworksmilwaukee.com, and you can also link to it from the Milwaukee Public Television website as well. That's mptv.org. At 67,000 people, $2 billion in wages, 4,100 businesses, and representing just over 4% of all regional jobs, our creative industries are a significant economic force. During the upcoming presentation, which starts at 5:30, we'll be learning more about who makes up the creative industries, what the challenges and opportunities are, and the next steps. In the meantime, all around us is a celebration of the best the region's creatives have to offer. Before we get to the main event, though, we're going to start off with some interviews. We're going to meet first Christine Harris, who's the president of the Cultural Alliance of Milwaukee and the mover and shaker behind Creativity Works. Welcome, Christine.
Thanks, Bonnie. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
This is so exciting. Look at all these people here.
It is. It's a year and a half in the making, and we're blown away that it's a sold-out event.
Tell me a little bit about what this project is, what you hope to accomplish with it.
The project really decided to take a look at what are our creative industries, which is a new way of looking at things in the community. It's a way of looking at our nonprofit cultural assets, plus individual creatives, plus for-profit creative businesses. The creative industries or the creative economy is 20 years ahead of us in Europe and 10 years ahead of us on the East Coast, and we're the first urban region in the Midwest to look at it this way and say, what can our creative assets do for our community? What's the economic significance? And how can they help be a differentiator as we all look for new global ways to compete?
Now, when we talk about creatives, we're not just talking about performing arts or visual artists. We're talking about a lot of other types of people, aren't we?
We are. There are basically 5 segments that fit within the creative industries: the design, the built environment, the communication side, and the product side; film and media, for-profit and nonprofit; performing arts, for-profit and nonprofit, music stores, etc.; visual arts and crafts, galleries as well as visual artists; and culture and heritage, our museums and our heritage sites. So it's a wide range, but the definition means all of those businesses and all of those individuals produce products or services that originate in aesthetic or cultural or creative content. So there's a very clear definition as to what's included.
Were you surprised at the range and the numbers that you discovered during this year?
Absolutely. We really had no idea what would end up. We were very surprised that the number was so large. It's actually almost twice the size of the water industry and food and beverage manufacturing together. So it's really quite large. And we were also surprised at how profuse it was throughout all 7 counties, that all 7 counties each have a set of creative assets that make it uniquely their own. And so we were surprised at how deep and broad and varied all of those assets are across the region.
I know we're going to get a lot of this in the presentation that's upcoming, but can you give me a quick overview of the main points that you discovered in this process?
Well, the main findings really were that we have a strong economic sector. We really didn't know how strong it was going to be, and that sector and that economy is going to grow on its own accord, and it's actually an export economy. A lot of these businesses do work and sell work all over the region, the country, and the world. So it's not just serving here, it's broader than that. We also found that the opportunity that people had to work together was unusual and provided more opportunities for business development. And we also found that the impact really has a threefold effect. If you grow the creative industries, you grow its economic base, but it also impacts how competitive other businesses can be and differentiating products and services. But the other piece is all of that helps us be a more fun place to live. Creatives bring creatives. It helps us be a more attractive region, and it helps us attract and retain more professional talent.
What are some of the next steps that are going to be outlined here today?
Well, the first next step is that the Cultural Alliance is going to morph its own business model to be something like the Creative Alliance, so that we can be the hub of services and resources, not just for the nonprofits, but also for the rest of the creative industries. And we are building a website that's going to link creatives and businesses, so if you want to find a job, if you want to find creative resources, you can find them. So we want to be the hub of resources and services. That's the next step. The other big step we're doing is that the biggest segment in this is design. It represents 46% of all of our creative industries. So with the GMC, we're going to be building a design council like the Water Council, incubating, connecting all of those industries along with the academic talent that we have here and the pipeline of workforce development, and build ourselves as a center of excellence, which is really, when you think about it, rooted in our heritage. When you think about Brooks Stevens and design and manufacturing and being a maker economy, that really comes from our past, and we're finding it's coming around again. So we're kind of moving from the machine shop to the design shop in a new era.
Well, and back to the machine shop in order to make all of these things.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's a fantastic thing. Are you finding that other people are really as excited as you are as you're talking to both businesses, government leaders, that sort of thing? Is this catching on?
Well, I have to tell you, a year ago, there was a lot of skepticism and there was a lot of pushback. It's like, well, what do you mean? I'm creative, and it's not about everybody not being creative. We can all be creative, and it's not about the creative process. It's about producing products that come from creative content. So we had to do a lot of talking and a lot of convincing, and frankly, we had to tighten our message so that we were clear about who we were. But what now we're finding is there are people here we've never heard of tonight. Polymeric Solutions. They make concrete solutions. They're here because they think their work is art, they believe their work is art, and they want to connect to the architects and the designers to do a better job with their art. The same is true for Wagner companies, metal fabricators. So we're finding that businesses want to connect with creatives, creatives want to connect with each other, and we're finding, in fact, what it's really all about for us is connecting the dots that are already here, and if we connect them well and brag about that and be proud of what we've got, we'll bring even more creative people here. And hopefully, all of these people that are graduating from our wonderful universities and technical colleges, hopefully they'll stay here. So I think there's lots of little spokes of the wheel that will help bring this together and make a real difference to the community.
Christine Harris, thank you so much.
You're welcome, Bonnie. Thanks for being here.
We'll be back in just a moment with some more interviews here at Creativity Works Moving Forward. Welcome back to Creativity Works Moving Forward. I'm Bonnie North, arts producer for Lake Effect, here with Milwaukee Public Television, and here with Julia Taylor, who's the president of the Greater Milwaukee Committee. Julia, what a fantastic event.
A lot of energy tonight. It's great.
So why did the Greater Milwaukee Committee want to jump on board with a Cultural Alliance and make this Creativity Works project happen?
Well, we think that it really underlines a lot of authentic assets that we have here in Milwaukee. About creativity and an innovative workforce. When we look at kind of what are our core economic advantages, one of them is talent. Actually, it's our primary one. So the ability to kind of plug in to what the Cultural Alliance is doing with Creativity Works and support that to continue to grow a talent base that's creative and innovative only benefits Milwaukee and the region.
What did you discover during this year-long process that surprised you? You've been here a long time and you've been working on these sorts of things for a while. Something must have come along.
You know, there's been a number of things, but it's interesting how self-defining companies are about creativity and creative workforces. We just did a mini rollout for our GMC membership a week ago. And while we were there, a gentleman who's 90, who's founded an incredible engineering firm, came up to me and said, "Do you have us in your list?" And I said, "No, we really don't." And he said, "I have 500 engineers who are designing controls for planes that don't even exist yet. I have a creative workforce." He said, "You know, we are a creative enterprise." So I think that type of defining is a point of pride, actually, in Milwaukee. And so I think we've really triggered something here that can help us continue to be the place that talent wants to come to, companies that want great talent want to come to, and we're going to see new products, we're going to see new spin-offs, we're going to see new startups, and companies grow as a result.
And of course, more jobs, because that's what this means.
The biggie is more jobs. I think the other piece that comes out of that is for us, it's similar to the Water Council. The assets are here. How do we connect the dots and create that greater platform that everybody can get on board and come forward with their ideas and their innovation and really try to grow this in ways that we haven't even thought of yet?
I like the idea of redefining and maybe expanding the definition of creativity, like the gentleman that owns the company who said, "I have 500 engineers who are doing this." I think maybe that's something that Milwaukee is good at doing, is redefining ourselves when we need to.
I think it is very important. We've had a lot of legacy assets here over the years. If you look at our educational institutions, our libraries, the institutional companies we've had here, the reason they've stayed here is because of this talent that we've got here. There are more patents that come out from private companies that come out from many of the universities. And they're often ones on process or materials, but it shows that is endemic here. So for us to be able to lift that up and say, if you want to expand your creative workforce and you want to do better designing for clothes or better designing for the submarine of the future, you come to Milwaukee because we have the creative enterprises here that can make it happen.
What are the next steps for the Greater Milwaukee Committee within this process?
Well, we're going to continue to work with the Cultural Alliance to help them build up, particularly the Design Council that we think will be one of the first councils to launch. And we're recruiting business leaders to get involved in that, to help define really the core pieces about the talent development, the educational development, the business development, business recruitment and attraction practices and policies that need to go forward. So those will be really important next steps, is collecting the leadership.
Julia, I want to thank you so much for taking time. Please enjoy the rest of the event.
Well, thank you, and thank you for being here and covering it. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. Julia Taylor, who's the president of the Greater Milwaukee Committee. We'll be right back with some more interviews in just a moment. Hi, I'm Bonnie North, arts producer for Lake Effect, here at the Creativity Works Moving Forward event at Rumble at Harley-Davidson. And I'm standing here with Mark Barr, who is one of the business people that we've been hearing about. One of the people who came forward and said, I consider myself working in a creative industry and I need creative people to work for me. Mark, welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So tell me about what you do and why creative people are so important to what you do.
Well, what we do is we create substrates with an artistic impression. Like concrete, we take concrete, and concrete is our canvas. And we basically take the concrete and we make it into a work of art. We take and we add color, we add textures to make it look like natural stone or actually whatever you'd like it to look like. So we really figure that the concrete that's out there can be art.
Well, absolutely. And so you're looking for people who understand color, who understand materials.
Right, that's correct.
How did you find out about this group and this event?
I've been a reader of the Biz Times for 20 years or 15 years or so, and I saw the creative class article, and I thought, that's we want to be involved with that because we do creative things with our work, and I wanted to figure out a way to connect with the creative people in the Milwaukee area, the architects, if you will, the people that are designing sets, stagecraft people, because they can utilize our processes and our products and our services in creating these surfaces.
How large a business do you have in Racine?
Basically, we're a smaller shop. We travel the Chicagoland area quite extensively, and we do everything from warehouse concrete to maybe a floor for Aurora Healthcare or a University of Wisconsin Parkside, or so it's a very wide range of applications that we utilize.
What are some of the most interesting patterns or creative things that you've done with Substrate?
Well, we've done things from an outdoor standpoint to make your broken down, cracked up patio, concrete patio look like bluestone or flagstone. We've done things like take your factory floor and repurpose the structure to make it into a showroom floor that looks like marble or granite. Today we're introducing our new product, Serenity Series, which is a cut above the normal stained concrete because it's an actual polymer that has the modeling and the marbling effect so it doesn't wear off. That's a problem that you have with stained concrete. The sealer goes on there, and then there's wear over the time. Salt erodes it, and then it starts to look bad and becomes a liability to the structure. So what we've done is we've formulated a system that actually laminates over the top of the concrete with a very tough product that's been proven in industry for 30 years. So these chemicals that we use to do this have been tried and true in the industrial setting. So they're definitely going to hold up for commercial and in the institutional type setting.
Well, and also from a creative standpoint, it allows the beautiful designs that people who work for you to last.
That's correct. And you can do patterns and borders, and really the sky's the limit. It's up to the imagination of the designer to come up with what they would like, and then we will fulfill that.
So are you looking for people tonight? Are you hoping to connect with designers
Absolutely.
tonight?
We already have found a few designers here tonight that are very interested in the product, and if we went home right now, this would be a success for us.
Well, Mark, I want to thank you so much for stopping by and talking with us. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
That's Mark Barr, President of Polymeric Solutions. I'm Bonnie North, Arts Producer for Lake Effect. You're at the Creativity Works Moving Forward event. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with another interview in just a moment. Hi, I'm Bonnie North, back with more interviews here at the Creativity Works Moving Forward event at Rumble at the Harley-Davidson Museum, produced by Milwaukee Public Television. And joining me are Neil Hoffman and Ken Kornack, who are from Orem Design. And welcome.
Thank you. Thanks. Good to be here.
It's such a pleasure to have you here, and you are on the creative side of things. But you also own a business as well. Tell me about how you found out about Creativity Works and why you wanted to be involved.
I have been involved in the nonprofit sector in Milwaukee, and I was really looking for an organization that had the creativity aspect of it as well. So I actually heard about Creativity Works from my friend Kate Kramer, who knew Shira Apple, and gave Shira a call and started getting involved, started being on some of the advisory committees, and just really trying to get more involved and help the organization.
Now, have you been involved from the beginning?
No, I would say probably just the last 6 months. So it's been a quick learning curve.
And Ken, for you?
I support whatever Neil does. She told me about it. It sounded interesting, and I support it. I just wanted to see what it's all about.
So tell me what Orem Designs does.
Orem Design is a motion graphic design studio. To some people, it's a little bit hard to understand, but if you know what graphic design is, we just make graphic design that moves. So we do anything from high-end corporate video to branding for television shows. One of our main clients is the Oprah Winfrey Show and the OWN network.
So I was going to ask, have you gotten involved with the OWN, I was have to say it, the OWN network, yes. So you've gotten involved with her as she's moved on to her own network.
We have been able to stay involved on some of the new shows, and they are looking for bringing in a new show into Chicago as well, so we're involved with that. So
what do you hope to get from being involved with Creativity Works? You as a business, are you looking for designers? Are you looking for people to work? Are you looking for contacts? What do you hope to get from being part of this organization?
I think I'm looking for all of those things. I'm a lover of Milwaukee. Ken likes to say that I dragged him back here from Chicago, kicking and screaming. The truth is we have 2 small children when we moved back, and I just think Milwaukee has so much potential that people don't give it credit for, so I support this organization totally. We want to hire people that are talented from the area, and we want people to hire us too. We do national level work, and there's many national companies here as well that could use a company like ours to work for them.
And Ken?
Well, we've found that with our clients you can be anywhere and work with them, but it helps to have been someplace else first. So we're hoping that our Milwaukee experience will let other people work remotely with bigger clients. It's good to think locally, but it's also good to bring clients from elsewhere to work here locally. So we're trying to set the example for that.
That is one of the things that I really like about Milwaukee, is because we can start thinking about things locally in a bigger way. Local doesn't have to mean right next door.
No, it doesn't. We lived in Chicago for about 10 years, and about 2 years of the two of us working together, we made the conscious decision to move back to Milwaukee, even though the bulk of our work was elsewhere. And it really has not impacted our business. Our business has grown every year since we've been here. So.
Do you find that the internet helps with that?
Definitely.
It couldn't have been done without it. Yeah. It couldn't have been done. Our delivery of projects is almost exclusively via the web of giant files that 10 years ago couldn't have been done. So it's made it possible to do.
And do you think that will make Milwaukee ever more attractive as people become more and more dependent on the internet? You think they're going to take like a page out of your book and be able to do their business from wherever they want to be?
We hope so. We hope so.
It's also all about relationships. It took us 10 years to build the relationships to do the work that we're doing. If we were just starting out today, it might be a different story.
Well, Neil and Ken, I want to thank you both so much. It's about to start, so I want to give you a chance to get your seats. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I'm Bonnie North. Thanks so much for being with us for these interviews today. The main presentation is about to start in just a moment, so stay tuned.
Kopensky, and I'm a member of the creative industries. I'm the brand manager and experience designer at Kaler Slater, and I choose to work in Milwaukee because of its small town values and its big city vibe. I've lived in New York, San Francisco, and Chicago, and none hold a candle to this place in terms of creative collaboration. I am in Milwaukee to stay.
My name is Ray Dre, and I flourish in the creative industry right here in Milwaukee, making really cool motorcycles, in case you haven't seen. I'm the Vice President and Director of Styling, and I choose to live in Milwaukee here because through my years of artistic experiences, not only here in Milwaukee, but also abroad, I've come to know and see that there is such a deep well of creative talent right here in my hometown where I grew up. And to me, that is a gift.
My name is Dasha Kelly, and I'm a member of the creative industries. I deliver spoken word and creative writing workshops to Milwaukee youth. I'm the founder and director of Stillwater's Collective, and I choose to live in Milwaukee because I want to have a hand in fostering hope and promise in the young people of my home city.
Hello, my name is Jim McDonald, and I am a member of the creative industries. I am a proud Associate Dean of the School of Media and Creative Arts at Milwaukee Area Technical College. I choose and have chosen to live and work in this Milwaukee region because of its large emphasis on the creative class, innovation, and arts in our community.
My name is Raul Deal, and I am a member of the creative industries. I'm on faculty at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee Peck School of the Arts, where I'm also the Artist in Residence for the Cultures and Communities program. I'm a mentor artist at Redline Milwaukee, and I love living in Milwaukee because it is vibrant, it's diverse, and it's full of innovative, passionate people who are working hard to make our communities strong.
My name is Jonathan Jackson, and I choose to live in Milwaukee because I call it my home. It's an incredible city. It's wonderful for fostering community, and I'm able to make an impact as a professional here, as a young professional, on the community. I'm the executive and artistic director of Milwaukee Film and the Milwaukee Film Festival.
My name is Ryan Ramos. I'm the lead designer for CT and Pet at GE Healthcare. I choose to live in Milwaukee because of the beautiful lake, the wonderful culture, the wonderful people, and there's opportunities everywhere.
These are just a few of the faces of the Milwaukee region's creative talent. Thank you, guys. Did you know that our creative industries here are 67,000 workers strong, representing some 4,100 enterprises? Well, we have plenty more in store to share with you this evening, and we are really glad that you're all here. I'm Jill Moran, Executive Officer of Kaler Slater, and I am really pleased and excited to welcome all of you here this evening for our presentation of our final report for Creativity Works, the Milwaukee Regional Creative Industries Project. And I want to thank Radio Milwaukee 88.9 for providing our welcoming music. Thank you, guys. And in addition to our live, yeah, did a great job. In addition to our live and in-person creative talent, I hope that all of you had a chance during the reception to check out the screens, just providing a sampling of our creative community, the work they're doing and where they are. If not, we're going to be playing that again later on, so you'll have a chance to check it out. And please make sure that you check out the creative posters and also the creative centerpieces at the tables up here in front. They were designed and created by our region's various creative individuals and or the businesses who wanted to come here tonight to show off some of their work. And really, if you haven't checked out the head cheese centerpiece at table 13 right over here, representing Malone's Fine Sausage, designed by DG Company, it is not to be missed. Head cheese, it's fabulous. So not only does all of this combine to demonstrate the incredible amount of talent we have here in our region, but it begins to show also how connected all of us in this room are. Many of the people and businesses in this room also export a lot of their work outside of our region, bringing business and revenue back into our community. I'd encourage all of you to take the time during the reception, which follows our presentation this evening, to make even more connections with all of the creative talent represented here in the room. We're excited to share with all of you what we've learned about the significance and the value of our creative industries here in the Milwaukee 7 region. We have many new and interesting faces here tonight, representing our nonprofit creatives, our individual artists and creatives, our for-profit creative businesses, and those businesses who basically want to connect with the creative industries, such as Equitable Bank, Malone's Sausage, and Polymeric Solutions. So welcome to all of you. We've got an awful lot to be proud of here, which really truly enhances our region's attractiveness as a place where creative talent comes to live, work, play, and learn. And not only does the city of Milwaukee serve as a significant focal point for many of our regional assets, they're also our partners in our National Endowment for the Arts City Design Grant, which funded a portion of this project. And so now, here to add his own welcome to this event, I'm proud to introduce a strong supporter of the creative industries and a pretty creative guy in his own right, our mayor, Tom Barrett. Tom?
Thank you, Jill. I'm Tom Barrett, the mayor of Milwaukee. I'm a member of the creative class as well. I'm making up stuff all the time. I want to take a minute and talk about cities, and then I want to talk about Milwaukee in particular. If you look through the history of mankind, of personkind, cities have always been the place where people come so that they can have a better life. And you look at the history of this country and how people migrated to cities. And they migrated to cities from different countries. And Milwaukee's a microcosm of that. We had Native Americans here, Germans here, Italians, Irish, Hispanics, people from Africa, people from Russia. And they all came to this city so that they could live the American dream. And so what you have by definition is a group of people who are not similar to each other. We are, if anything, not homogenized. No one is homogenized when you come to a city. And it allows you to thrive in a way that you may not be able to thrive if you have to be like everyone else. And to me, that's one of the great strengths of cities, is that it gives you the opportunity to climb that ladder of opportunity that has made America such a great country. And it allows you really to expand yourself. And that's what this is all about. So you've got the notion that cities are a place where creative people come, where people come because they are a little different, because they don't necessarily want to do what everybody else is doing. And they want to be able to get out and really expand their horizons. But then you take Milwaukee, and you take what we have here, and this report demonstrates something that I think many of us knew, and that we have a tremendous, tremendous wealth of creativity right here in Milwaukee. So whether it's arts or architecture, whether it's photographers or product designers, we have it all right here. And several years ago, we had this competition. And Jill made reference to this. And it was a very competitive competition. In fact, of the 200 applications, only 21 were chosen. And Milwaukee was one of those 21 that were chosen. And it's because of Jill's leadership and Christine's leadership and Paul's leadership that we've been able to put this together so that we can showcase all of what Milwaukee truly is. And that we are the place where I have said many, many times that Laverne and Shirley don't work here anymore. The city has changed. The city has changed and has grown. And our opportunity now is to take this and move it to the next level. And again, you look at the great cities. They are cities where the arts flourish. And on a per capita basis, if you compare Milwaukee to our peer cities in arts, whether it's performing arts, whether it's product design, we rank very, very high. But what we need to do is to take this even a step further, because we will continue to draw people if they feel that they can have an opportunity in this community to flourish. So to me, this is all about economic development. It's all about job creation. And as we know, many of the jobs that are created right now in the creative fields are jobs in small business. And small businesses are really the engines of our economy. And many of these businesses are businesses that employ fewer than 10 people. So the city of Milwaukee, when we heard about this, wanted to be very, very much a partner, because we felt this was important. Or to put it another way, again, so you understand the creativity of people in public office, I could see this parade going by, and I thought, I want to get in front of it. Because it is important to the future of this community. It is important that people know that not only has Milwaukee historically been a place where people have come so they can be creative, but this is a place where we want people to continue to come so that they can be creative, so that our children and grandchildren can have this be a place where we can succeed. So I look forward to working with all of you to take this message throughout this entire community and to build on it in a substantive economic way so that we can show that Milwaukee is a place where creativity thrives. I have a proclamation that I won't read because that will make you think there's no creativity whatsoever. But it does note that today is Creativity Works Day throughout the entire city of Milwaukee. So with that, I'll hand that to Joe. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Mary Barrett. Thank you for your support. Thank you for the support of your administration. And thank you in particular for Rocky. We are committed to working with you to bring jobs and new economic growth to the city of Milwaukee and the entire M7 region. I'm Mike Jones from Miller Coors. Betsy Brown of CK Advertising and I were lucky enough to be named the honorary co-chairs of this project. One thing I've learned over the last 18 months is being an honorary co-chair is not a bad deal. You get a lot of credit and you do very little work. So I encourage any of you, if you can get that gig, to take it. The real work, the day-to-day heavy lifting was done by our working co-chairs, Jill Marin and Paul Matthews. So hats off to Jill and Paul for all they've done. We also owe a debt of gratitude to the project leadership team that Jill and Paul assembled. Please take a look at the screen or your agenda for a listing of the project leadership team. If you're a member of the project leadership team, please stand up and get your ovation. Most of you already know that Creativity Works is, first of all, an entity created to inventory the creative assets of the M7 area. You will learn today of the breadth and depth of our remarkable assets. This inventory, in turn, will allow us to identify scale opportunities, to leverage synergies, and to drive focused innovation, all aimed at renewing growth and creating jobs. But before we go any further, I'd like to introduce a co-sponsor of this evening's event, Gail Leone from Harley-Davidson. Gail joined Harley-Davidson in 1997 and served as their executive vice president until May of 2010. Gail is currently the president of the Harley-Davidson Foundation. Her accomplishments are too numerous to list. But to name a few, she is a member of the board of directors of the Sargento Foods Company, the Board of Directors of the Bradley Center, the YMCA, and the Milwaukee Art Museum. Please welcome the accomplished and distinguished Gail Leone.
Thank you, Mike, and welcome to all of you here this evening. When Christine and Jill approached me last year about this project, I was extraordinarily excited. My mind raced immediately to what I believe really is one of the distinguishing qualities of our city, which is a center of industrial design. I'm not sure if the general public would immediately sort of jump to that. They might sort of think of Milwaukee more closely aligned with beer, with cheese, or with maybe even our motorcycles. But what you miss in that, and which becomes really very clearly evident, is that the beer bottle itself, the color, the design, all relates to creativity. The cheese, we have a cheese centerpiece, as Jill pointed out, but trademarks related to cheese and the artisan cheese business here are particularly strong. And our beautiful motorcycles, we like to call them rolling sculptures, they evidence clearly an entire design process. We have a whole table of our designers, from designers in our education to our designers in our marketing, designers in our clothing, and designers in the motorcycles itself. But what's also really wonderful about Milwaukee, I think, and why it's special to be here at the Harley-Davidson Museum, is the fact that we have so many institutions that really celebrate design in Milwaukee. At MIAD, you have the Brooks Stevens collection. At the Milwaukee Art Museum, we just closed a fabulous design show, the design collection that we have there. At Kohler, as my daughter used to say, it's the toilet museum, but all the exotic bathroom fixtures, but a celebration of industrial design. And of course, last but not least, the Harley-Davidson Museum. And it is just a history of not just motorcycling and motorcycles, but it's really a history and a long legacy of design starting in 1903, one that we are extraordinarily proud of. And so we welcome you here tonight. We thought this was a fitting place to have the report out of Creativity Works. And we hope you agree. We hope you come back and tour the museum and see what we think is part of the distinguishing history of Milwaukee in the area of design and creativity. So thank you and welcome.
Well, thank you so much, Gail, and thank you to the Harley-Davidson Motor Company for your sponsorship and your support of this project. And if you have not been next door in the museum, please check it out. It is an extraordinarily beautifully designed facility, and it is a terrific experience. I also wanted to thank Northwestern Mutual, who has been a co-sponsor of this event. Thank you very much for your early and ongoing support to both of you. Thank you. And I'd also like to thank all of our table hosts this evening, our individual hosts. I think you see a full listing. So thank you all very much for your support. Well, this project was designed and developed by the Cultural Alliance of Greater Milwaukee in partnership with the Greater Milwaukee Committee, following a 2008 GMC study on the state of our region's cultural assets. This project was managed by the Cultural Alliance and led by Christine Harris, President and Executive Director, and all-around great creative in her own right. Christine? She's throwing it back to me. All right, I'll stay up here. We know that we have a wealth of creative talent in southeastern Wisconsin. But beyond our own region, we know that the creative sector is a global growth industry worldwide. The UN Conference on Trade and Development recently came out with a creative economy report. And that report put world trade of creative goods and services at $592 billion. Moreover, from 2002 to 2008, that trade grew at an astonishing 14%, making the creative sector one of the most dynamic sectors of the world economy during the last decade. So should the Milwaukee region maybe be positioning itself to participate in the creative industry's global growth? We think so. We'd also like to thank tonight our co-chairs for their leadership and participation, including, as you've heard, my co-chair, working co-chair Paul Matthews, as well as Betsy Brown of CK, Kramer Krasselt, and Mike Jones of Miller Coors. But our co-chairs were just the tip of the iceberg. Creativity Works involved more than 800 people across our 7-county region, including a regional planning committee and executive council who contributed their input, their time, their ideas, and their support to this project. I think you see a listing now of the executive council and planning committee members. We are really indebted to your service and your commitment to helping us to co-create this project and to help us lead down our research path. So would all of you who are here this evening please raise your hands so we can properly thank you? Thank you all. And now, I would like to reintroduce Christine Harris to discuss this project in more detail, and she's also going to introduce to you the members of our committee from Mount Auburn Associates. Christine.
Thanks, Jill. It's really, really wonderful after 18 months of working on this to have all of you here to share with us and all that we've brought to fruition and all that's yet to come. It's just getting started. We did this project as the Cultural Alliance because we wanted to understand the full contribution of all of our creative assets. We are a service organization for the nonprofit arts community, and we're dedicated to ensuring that every resource at our disposal is made available to sustain our nonprofit arts community. We began to hear a lot about the creative economy and the creative industries. Europe is 20 years ahead of us. The East Coast is about 10 years ahead of us. By the way, we're the first urban region in the Midwest to do this work. So we wanted to see how could we, yeah, that's worth, right. It's good to be on the leading edge. So we wanted to take a wider lens and look at our creative assets from a broader perspective than we had done it before so that we could really understand and communicate the full value of everything that we have here. So when we completed the cultural assets inventory for the GMC in 2008, along with Jill Morin's Quality of Life Committee there, we recommended a creative community planning process. The GMC moved forward with a creative summit in February of 2009. We kind of called ourselves the Creative Coalition at that time. Jill Morin became our champion for that, and we ended up moving forward and deciding that we would do something with this. And in fact, I'll tell you a little bit more about Mount Auburn. We went and sought the best in the country to work with us. So what is Creativity Works? Well, as I said, it began about 18 months ago, and it began with a major grant from the United States Department of Commerce Economic Development Administration. We were the first cultural organization to receive a grant from the EDA to do this work. In fact, when I first talked to the regional director of the EDA in Chicago, he said, well, we don't fund potters and basements, but we worked with a wonderful angel at the Department of Commerce, and she knows who she is. And we found the ways to re-language what we were talking about, to really talk about it as an economic industry sector and talk about it in language of economic development. And so with that and a grant from the National Endowment for the Arts, which we received in partnership with the City of Milwaukee, as the mayor mentioned earlier, and 13 local funders, we began the work. And our goal is to elevate the identity, the value, the contribution, and the potential of all of our creative assets and look at it from a strategic, holistic way. The components are to define an inventory and map You'll see in the final report, which will be available online at our website tomorrow, actually maps of all of our creative assets across all of our 7 counties, as well as an inventory of all of those assets. We wanted to understand the economic value. We wanted to look at this from an economic perspective, not a cultural planning perspective. We wanted to build a way that people could connect, that creatives could connect, that businesses could connect, that those Malone Cheese and polymeric solutions could find creatives well in the community, and we wanted to have a strategic action plan, and we wanted to start it while we were undertaking the research. We wanted to do early implementation. So we did an RFP to try and find the best in the country to work with us, and we found the best in the country. Mount Auburn Associates came to us from Massachusetts. They began this creative economy work creative economy work 10 years ago. They've been economic development specialists for over 25 years, and you can see their areas of expertise. They have been doing this work since 1999, and for those of you that happen to have read Richard Florida's Rise of the Creative Class, their first creative economy study in New England predates Richard Florida's book, and I'm really glad about that too. But they also brought in 3 other team members to round out their team with different levels of expertise. RTS Inc., you'll be meeting Stu from there in a few minutes, creative planning, and also decision support partners. So now I'd like to turn it over to the experts at Mount Auburn, and Michael Kane and Stuart Rosenfeld. And let me tell you a little bit, Michael Kane has been a practitioner and a researcher in this field for over 25 years. He played an integral role in developing Mount Auburn's expertise in the creative economy, and he has extensive knowledge of all sorts of economic development sectors, and he's worked on creative strategic plans for New England, Louisiana, Washington, D.C., New York City, to name a few. Stu Rosenfeld has over 30 years of work experience in public policy research. He resides in North Carolina, and he has an emphasis on education and workforce training, rural development, and technology policy. He has also done a lot of cultural and creative planning, and he's also particularly well-versed in the development of design clusters both in this country and abroad. Stu, Michael?
Thank you, Christine. I'm going to share the spotlight a little bit with my colleague, Stu Rosenfeld. We're going to do a little bit of a back and forth on parts of this slideshow. And I realize that the focus here is creative industries, but I've got to get football out of my mind, if you'll bear with me for a few minutes. Before Sunday, I thought the perfect Super Bowl was the Patriots against the Packers. And 2 teams destined for greatness, and I thought that, you know, maybe we would see a great game. But you probably know, for those of you that follow football, we hit a brick wall. I'm from New England Patriots fan, and those awful Jets just did a job on us. So my colleagues and I at Mount Auburn decided that we would marshal all of our energy and all of our support to the Packers, and go Packers. And if you play the Jets, you better win. So we're going to just go through with you briefly some of the highlights of what we've done over this last year, some of what we found, and the implications for your creative work here. Let me start off. Great. Christine and I have worked in tandem, and we're going to just hopefully work in tandem one more time here. Why focus on creative industries? Well, there's a couple of points here before I talk about these individual countries. In the parlance of economic development, there's 3 or 4 things that are absolutely essential for growing strong economies: state level, regional, municipal, metropolitan. Diversity. Just like your investment portfolios, and I'm sure all of you have them, diversity is a strength. And if you rely on 1 or 2 key economic sectors, then you live and die with those economic sectors. So diversity is the recommendation and the strategy that most economic development professionals and consultants will recommend. And the creative industries is one of a portfolio of economic sectors that we think is important. And that's why countries around the world are seeing the creative industries as one element within a diversified economic portfolio. What's also important in economic parlance for diversity is that what you focus on, the sectors you focus on, are so-called export-based. That is, they have a product or a service and they sell it someplace outside of your immediate area, and by doing so, they're bringing in revenue from someplace else. And what that does is it has an enormous impact on quality of life, your productivity, and the standard of living. So we always recommend and emphasize export-based economic sectors, and your manufacturing base is probably the principal example of that. But the creative industries are also export-based. If you think of anything from a graphic design or a visual painting or a craft item or a film, generally what happens is that product and service sometimes is sold to a local market, but oftentimes it's sold to a national and international market. So the creative industries are one of those export-based industries, so it makes it a logical focus for economic development. And then the third piece that's important is also to look at emerging industries. So you've got diversity, you've got export-based, and emerging industries. Those emerging clusters and economic sectors that oftentimes, over the long haul, bring economic rewards. The best example is biotechnology. 15 or 20 years ago, nobody understood it, nobody could classify it, didn't have any idea what it meant, and 15 years later, it's clearly one of the major economic engines for certain regions around the country. And we feel that the creative industries is still in its infancy. Even though it's been around for about 10 years, we still feel that it has a lot to offer. There's a little bit of complexity, as you'll see from both my report and from Stu's, about how to define it, how to quantify it, but it's a work in progress. So we feel that it has a lot of cachet. And again, these countries around the world that are noted here have really made the creative industries a priority, and we think it's important to pay attention to them. Here in the United States, just in our work alone, between Stu's work and our work at Mount Auburn, we've done creative industry work for a number of states, regions, and municipalities. And Colorado is a great example of what you're bumping up against. Colorado's governor, when he got our report from the creative industries, he saw the numbers, he saw the revenue, he saw the diversity, he saw what value it could add to Colorado's economy, and he embraced that in a significant way. In Louisiana, we did a creative economy analysis for Lieutenant Governor, who's now the mayor of New Orleans, Mitch Landrieu. In 2005, before Hurricane Katrina, there were 144,000 people employed in the cultural economy. That's larger than oil and gas, larger than manufacturing, second only to healthcare in the state. So that captured people's attention. Then in 2005, in August, Hurricane Katrina hit. You'd think that all sectors, including the creative economy, would take a really serious hit. State of Louisiana hired us back in 2009 to take a look at the employment numbers, and it actually grew by 4 percentage points. So this is one of these industries. It's not huge growth, it's not significant growth, but it's one of the few economic sectors that over the last 5 to 7 years has demonstrated some employment growth. What we've done over the course of the year is, as Jill or Christine mentioned, we've contacted, worked with, gotten direction from about 800 of you. A great process. We've met with people in each of the 7 counties. We've met with focus groups in each of the segments. We've had individual interviews with you, telephone conversations, some of you multiple times. Appreciate your patience. I'll say many, many times, I can't tell you how important that input was and how much we appreciate it. We've provided you with a data
analysis, which you're going to see from Stu, about your employment numbers. We've done databases, which we've left with Christine, a whole database. I think Jill or Christine mentioned there are 4,100 enterprises. There's a database of all of that information that's going to be left at your disposal. One of our partners, Sorrel Phillips, created these really neat maps where she looked at the concentration of creative industry employment in each of the 7 counties and then broke it out by segment. So all of those color-coded maps we've spent a couple of months putting together, and that data and information is at your disposal. We've looked at, we've also had surveys of festivals, manufacturers, and artists. The results of those surveys informed our product, informed our challenges, informed our recommendations. That information was exceedingly helpful. And then we have the final report and recommendations. You know that at your table, there's the executive summary online. I think it's available as we speak. There's a link on the Cultural Alliance website for our 100-page report. Absolutely certain a small percentage of you will probably read that 100 pages, but I have to tell you, for us it was exciting to put it all together, and if you ever want some realistic idea of the breadth and depth of what you have here in your creative economy, just scan that 100 pages. It's absolutely remarkable, and believe me, we had to cut that back from all that we had from all of our research. So this is not a made-up or a pro forma enterprise and activity that we've done here. You've got a very, very strong, solid foundation within your assets of your creative industries. So I'm going to just pause for a second, let Stu do a little bit of the economic significance, tell you a little bit about what we found and how we segmented this, and then I'm going to come back up and talk a little bit about challenges and then conclude with a short summary.
My only football story is I am from Wisconsin, and I still in my freezer have a piece of cheese molded in the shape of Brett Favre, and now I can't even give it away. Nobody wants it. So cheese is an art too. But the definition is critical because everything we're going to talk about from now on is based on this definition. So I think we have to really get this right. And we come at it from economic development, both Mount Auburn and RTS. So we use the enterprise as the defining entity. But of course, we describe enterprises by the industry, and we have a national North American industrial classification system. And so we use that to classify these, but we don't have any classification for creative. The NAICS system has not caught up to where we are in a lot of these emerging sectors. So we use a decision rule, which is what you see here, is that we look at these sectors to see which ones the competitive advantage, the market value of the good is primarily dependent on the artistic or cultural or aesthetic or creative content. And this is somewhat subjective, but I think that around the world, most people have been pretty consistent in what they found, and maybe 90% of what they decide they use is the same. There are some differences. In Los Angeles, they include toys. We did a study in Wyoming because of the Western culture. We included leather, but most of them are pretty much agreed upon around the world. We also look at this as a system, as a regional production system, which means we first of all look at all of the companies and the self-employed. And this is crucial in the creative economy because a very large percentage of many of these sectors are people who are freelancers or self-employed. And that's more true of this than any other industry sector. And if you don't include those, you miss in many sectors 20, 30, 40, up to 60% of who's there. When we did the study of Montana in the visual arts, they only recorded 34 people employed for companies, but there were 1,970 self-employed. And then the Arts Council had a list of 5,840 people who were working artists. So you can see you would really miss a lot of that. And the self-employed within the arts are growing faster than employment in total around the country. But because we think of this as a system, we also have to include the support system, the educational institutions, the associations, the markets, the venues, and all of the nonprofits that support these, that provide the networking, that provide the in many cases, real services. Now, in looking at the creative economy, it covers a very wide, broad ground. So in order to understand it, we break it up into these 5 what we call segments, which are really just some kind of structures or groupings of companies that have more in common, that have more commonalities and more interdependencies, so that you understand what we need, see where the strengths are in the region, and understand their needs and their markets better. And without reading these, you can see these are the sectors that illustrate what's in each of these 5. It's really just an organizing framework for the creative industries. Next. We did the same thing for occupations, because another way that we measure the economy is by the standard occupational classification system. And these are all self-identified by people, what they're doing. But we broke it again into 4 segments so we'd understand better what the occupations look like in the region. And you can see who's in these different segments. And we focus on the enterprise, but we also realize that from perspective of skill needs and the economy, that the people who are working on occupations, whether they're in a creative enterprise or not, is important to the region's creative economy. And the next one shows these numbers and how they're defined. You can see that the circle on the left is what we call the creative industries. These are the people that are employed in companies or self-employed within these sectors that we defined as creative. And some of these people work in creative occupations, some don't. In fact, the majority of them don't. They're the support that you need to run a business, even though it's a creative business. The other businesses, and you notice we don't say creative and non-creative. That's not the dichotomy, because every business is creative to some extent. But we have some whose it's a matter of degree. That some they base their product and their service on the creativity, and some it's just integrated into what they do. But there are people who work in these other businesses who also have creative skills, and one of them we mentioned there was musicians. And in this region, 40% of all the people who classify themselves as musicians are employed by religious organizations. And if you miss those, you'd miss most of the musicians in the area. And this is true in a lot of stores. Manufacturers employ designers, and stores employ interior decorators. So you've got a lot of people working in other companies. And if you look at the Milwaukee region versus the state and the U.S., you can see that the number is larger in this region than it is in the state and than it is in the U.S. And this is using the same classification system. And this, again, is amazingly common around the world. This 4 to 5% is pretty much what you would find if you went to New Zealand or Singapore or the United Kingdom or Denmark. And but Milwaukee is higher than I think the majority of the places we've worked. If you look at the next one, you can see how the creative industries stack up against other sectors of the economy. And you can see, for example, that the creative industries is larger than the food and beverage and the water businesses combined, which is really significant, because these are 2 clusters that are very important to Milwaukee, but this is even bigger, and it's almost as big as construction. So you can see it has a major impact on this region's economy that's often overlooked because it's something that the traditional, conventional economic development people have not looked at in the past. The next one shows where Milwaukee stands up against just a few other cities. And you can see that it's higher than Charlotte, it's higher than Cleveland, both of which are branding themselves as creative cities. It's not quite up to Atlanta, which is in some ways wants to be, at least the New York of the South, and it has some very large employers there. But you can see that Milwaukee looks very good compared to other cities like it. I think I'll turn it back to Michael now. Oops.
Don't lose my place. Thanks. We thought we'd make an effort, and I know it's always risky when you do something like this, to tell people what's distinctive about your culture or your industry or your economy. But nonetheless, throughout the course of this, we were asked to say a little bit about what's distinctive here. And I'm not going to go through each one of these, but I want to just highlight a couple things that we think are just really, really important about what you have here. First and foremost, I think Gail Is Gail still here? Yeah. We had a great meeting with her way back when in this, the early stages of this thing. And she just said manufacturing and design, manufacturing, design, manufacturing, design. And we got it. We finally got it. And we understand it. And it took us a while to get our arms around it. But when you look at all of the manufacturing companies that you have here and the degree to which design makes them competitive, it's extraordinary. I mean, we've seen this other places that we've worked around the country, and you know from Christine's slide that we do work on creative economy, and we also do work in economic development, both of our firms. So speaking from our combined experience of 50 years, economic and creative economy, you guys have this thing in spades here, this sort of maker economy and the connection between design and manufacturing and competitiveness. I've said this before, and you know, for those of you that heard it, you know, I hope you can just sort of bear with me, but it's worth saying again. We did a creative economy report and analysis for Washington, D.C. Now, I know Washington, D.C. isn't Milwaukee, and it isn't the Milwaukee 7 region, but we interviewed hundreds of people there, the same way we interviewed hundreds of people here, and in D.C., the number of times that higher education came up in conversation was probably somewhere between 5 and 10. It was that few, and that's not hyperbole, that's not exaggeration. When we talked with the 800 plus of you, it probably came up in 90% of the conversations in some fashion. Businesses, organizations, individual artists, manufacturers, didn't matter who it was, somehow your work, your employees, your competitive position, the content of what you do somehow got translated or associated with your higher ed institutions, including your two-year institutions. So the way in which your higher ed institutions contribute to, play a role in, or part of the fabric of your economy, your creative industry, it's remarkable. I had the privilege of looking at your history, heritage, and culture. So I went back to the early 1800s and did a little bit of a historical overview of the waves of immigrants that came into the greater Milwaukee area and to try to understand the degree to which they influenced your creative economy. And when you look at, certainly the German influence was predominant and it was huge, but you have Italian and Irish and Jewish and Serbian and African American and Latino. And it's just amazing how this gumbo of groups from all over the world have contributed to what you have here. It may not be clear now as it was in the mid-1800s, late 1800s, early 1900s, and throughout, but in our estimation, what you have here, there's no doubt that it was contributed to, and its breadth and its depth is rooted in those immigrant populations, in your history and your ethnic communities. There's also an element here, we heard a lot of times about how conservative and how traditional your culture is and your businesses and your community, and we get that, you know, we understand it, we agree with you to some extent. There is an element of conservatism here, but there's also, I mean, if you've read, well, if you saw those 8 people that came up here, those are pretty emblematic of really hip, edgy, new, creative people. And Midwest Magazine, I'm sure you've seen it, they did a profile of 9 or 10 of the new creatives that are coming in here. And then some of the interviews that we had, both in their counties and also in Milwaukee, it's amazing how rich, diverse, sort of edgy, cutting edge some of it is. And so to have this blend of traditional, conservative, and edgy, and cutting edge, all in this sort of gumbo that's your creative industries, it's pretty remarkable. And then a couple of other quick things, and then I'll move on. You know, when we do this kind of work, it's qualitative as much as quantitative, and all of the data sort of informs the qualitative, and it's just this sort of knitting together process. And countless numbers of conversations and focus groups that we had with you all had this recurring theme of so many people who grew up here, left to go to school, work someplace else. I think like the woman, is it Melissa? That from Marlisa, who sort of went to school, lived someplace else, found it, whatever, however fulfilling or unfulfilling it was, and wound up moving back here. And when you hear that, 15, 20, 30, 40 times in conversations, you begin to pay attention to it because it's more than just anecdotal, it's real. So there's a way in which the affordability, the accessibility, the ease and the comfort of what you have here brings people back in ways that we haven't seen before. I'm not going to dwell too much on this, but other than to say that the creative industries are sort of a threefold impact. They not only have all of those jobs and those wages that were mentioned earlier and are in the top circle, they also help to make other industries and sectors more viable, more competitive, and they enhance their revenue generation and their income. And they also provide for an attractive quality of life. They also attract people, they attract businesses. So the creative economy really has a threefold impact and a benefit, and that's important to keep in mind. We did, excuse me, this is one of the maps or the graphs that I really like because it shows you the relative concentration of where the employment is in the creative industries in your 7-county region. And you'll note that Waukesha and Milwaukee just sort of pop out. It's obvious that Milwaukee County would have a high concentration. Waukesha has a very strong concentration of printing and publishing. And then the other counties are less so in terms of their contribution of employment, but that doesn't diminish the diversity that they bring to it and the breadth that they bring to your creative industries. This particular slide has way too much information for you to digest and for me to go over, so it's in your executive summary. So all I'm going to say is that it's our attempt to sort of consolidate this employment and wage and proportion of employment data on one page so that you can see it without having to do a lot of work. So feel free to sort of investigate it, look at it, digest it, but we're going to move on. So one of the things that we did, and you'll see in that 100-page tome that many of you probably won't read, but we looked at all of the segments and we tried to cull out some of the challenges and strengths and opportunities in each one of those. And let me just spend a couple of minutes here because I think this is important. In performing arts, which we usually classify as theater, dance, and music, you've got some real assets and some real gems here. You've got a cutting-edge, conservative, mainstream, a whole portfolio of performing arts organizations and businesses that is very vibrant and it's growing and it's viable. And the challenge here is to maintain that strength so that it becomes even stronger and more viable and a more important part of your creative industry. The sustainability of the nonprofits within the performing arts is something that emerged in conversation repeatedly. And there's no question that the audiences are shifting, the way that young people buy tickets. They're less predisposed to have annual subscriptions. They buy last minute. There's a white audience, a Latino audience, a black audience, a young audience. It's really difficult and a challenge for those nonprofits to figure out a way to make money and sustain their income and revenue generation. And that's probably going to be around for a while. But I think in the strategies and recommendations that we have, both in the executive summary and in the final report, there's some recommendations and strategies to address that. And then cultural education. I think Dasha and maybe a couple of others have mentioned the importance of not only exposing kids in the next generation to all of what you represent here, but there's also an element of the importance of skill development. And when we went over to meet with Ricardo Diaz at the early stages of this thing, he took us through this little auditorium where there were about 25 kids ranging in age from 8 to 12, and Denora was there. Each one of them had either a cello or a violin in their hands, and they were getting instructed in probably the highest end of classical music that I've experienced. And it's so important that kids not only get exposed to theater and dance and music, but they actually feel it, and they can get instructions and skills, because that's the next generation of not only creative workers, but also creative entrepreneurs. In design, one of the things that we ran up against was sort of a typical dynamic that you find virtually any place. When companies and organizations want good design talent, they often think LA, Miami, San Francisco, Boston, I got to go someplace else. Well, the news is that a lot of it's right here. Your higher ed institutions are a wellspring of design talent, and some of the larger companies that have downsized, some of the designers there are still in this region, and some of the people that are being trained at MATC, highest end. And some of those people, incidentally, are being attracted to LA, and some of the companies here don't even realize that that talent drain is happening. So it's important to develop a system that informs companies and organizations of the talent that you have here in design, so that those companies, those organizations can be more competitive and actually tap into the design base that you have. Stu did a design of manufacturing companies to get an idea of how much they use design. Those results are in our final report. They're referred to in the executive summary. But one of the challenges here is to get companies and organizations even more aware of what the design capability can do to enhance their competitiveness. And then for designers, like artists, it's important to give them entrepreneurial skills, because in order for them to make it in the marketplace, they really desperately need them. In visual arts and crafts, the first bullet and the second bullet are really about markets and customers and selling product. We heard repeatedly that it's important for local artists and craftspeople to figure out more ways to sell product locally. That's important. But also we were struck by, in the artist survey, how few of the artists actually sell product online. And so there should be a way in which this project can address and help artists and craftspeople who want to broaden their market and customer base to figure out a way to do that around the country. And there, believe me, there are, and you know this, there are artists and craftspeople and designers here who do sell nationally and internationally, and that's one of your strengths. But for those that haven't quite broken into that national and international market, there needs to be a way to help them. Film and media. We talked with Jonathan Jackson a couple of months ago, and what he wants to do, and we wholeheartedly support, is to really build up the film base and the production base that you have here. There's a lot of states that go after film. They have lots of incentives, and that's really important, and there's a role for incentives. But if you build a documentary and film production base here, people and companies and organizations are going to come here. And you have all of the higher ed institutions, you have the capability of doing it, so it's building that film base here is important. Printing and publishing. I can't go through with you all of the intricacies and how that industry is changing. There's a really rapid dynamic and a shift that's happening in printing and publishing, where there's this sort of interesting convergence between graphic design and publishing and advertising and communication, and they're all beginning to merge in a way that puts tremendous pressure on printing and publishing companies to be more than just a one tool or one service shop. And those companies that you have here, printing and publishing in large, you have Quad Graphics and Hal Leonard and others that are huge employers, and it's going to be important to make sure that they get the talent and the support that they need to survive. And then there's this notion about balancing the edgy and the traditional. For culture and heritage, keeping the experience fresh and new came up repeatedly in the conversations that we had with museum operators and historical sites. There tends to be a lack of appreciation for all the richness that you have here in your museums, in your historical sites, and somehow getting that message out that it's just not a one-time experience, that what you have here with the number of artifacts and the number of exhibits and the changes that are going on in your museums and historical sites is really something to appreciate. And then also trying to provide opportunities for collaborations and partnerships. I'm going to conclude by saying here's a list on the top half of this slide of what we provided. I've said to you we've gotten all kinds of databases and surveys and updates and reports. You have a ton of information at your disposal. But the punchline here is that in the 9 years that we've been doing this, I don't think we've ever seen, and this isn't just sort of for your edification, I don't think we've ever seen a group of people that have more talent, more partnerships, sort of a fabric to launch a creative industry to the extent that you do. You have the assets, you have the foundations, you have the companies, you have the organizations, you have the talent, you have the leadership, you have projects underway. You're primed, if I can just refer to what Christine mentioned in her remarks. You're primed to go from cutting edge to leading edge, and I know you can do it, and so can the Packers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael and Stu. As you can see, they've done an incredible amount of work for us. And we know you're going to look forward to reading that 100-page report because there's an incredible amount of work and valuable information there. So now what? We've come this far. Now what do we do with this plan? Well, how do we turn ideas into actions? And how do we build on this strong foundation that we've heard about? So let's talk first about some key findings that we'll walk through, and then we'll talk about, just briefly go through some strategic initiatives. First of all, looking at our key findings, our region's creative industries really, as you can see, are a significant economic industry. But connecting and convening the creative industries is critical, and you can see we're starting to do that right here tonight by all of you being here. But we did find that the support system in place is currently fragmented, it's siloed, it's under-resourced. We need to do a better job of linking companies with local talent, for example. And so with your help, we are going to change that. There is a lot of power in this room tonight. Just look around you. Look at the power and the talent and the energy in this room tonight. And we want to start capitalizing on that. And we're going to be able together to change this by linking and leveraging our creative industry assets into a more cohesive economic cluster. So let's look at our strategic initiatives. There are 4, and we'll just kind of walk through these for you tonight. First of all, growing the creative industries into a regional economic driver. We really believe that it can be a significant economic driver. Diversity in our economy is very critical, and we think that we have the opportunity here because our vision is to sustain and grow the creative industries, as we said, as an important part of our local economy. With such a focus, this economic industry cluster can help to create jobs and businesses. We'll talk more about that. Enhance the competitiveness of other businesses, as we've heard, and be an important asset in keeping the talent that's coming out of our great higher education institutions, and attracting and retaining professional talent, and more substantially enhance the vitality and the quality of place throughout our region. So let's talk about the first initiative a little bit more. First, to grow them into a signature regional driver. Frankly, we believe that we want Milwaukee, we believe we can make Milwaukee into the creative hub of the Midwest, and it was really a pleasure to have the mayor here tonight to endorse that effort here in the city of Milwaukee. To achieve that goal, a couple things we're going to recommend. We're going to recommend that the state of Wisconsin formally adopt the creative industries, if you will, as a target cluster for development. We think our timing is very good on this. As we know, there's a lot of discussion in Madison about restructuring the Department of Commerce and a much stronger focus on job development and business growth throughout the state of Wisconsin. We believe the creative industries can play its part in that, and we think that we'll have an opportunity working with the state to help advance economic growth in the state through creative industries. We want to strive to create a robust networking system which will connect and engage creative professionals. This will include a web-based interactive system to link the creative professionals, to link and leverage the people and businesses of the industries. And in addition to sharing information on the internet, we will facilitate formal and informal meetups building on the Creativity Works model. Some of you have already had a chance to participate that in the past months, and tonight is just a terrific example of that here. So just briefly, what's already in progress? We are underway in our effort to build a web-based one-stop creative services hub, and we are also developing a Creatives in Residence program to connect artists and other creatives with regional businesses in order to spark creativity and innovation across the community. Let's turn to expanding the creative talent base. We believe that it's vital that we provide more extensive professional development opportunities for individuals and businesses in the creative industries. And we've already heard about the great educational infrastructure we have here. We're turning out some really talented young professionals. We want them to stay here and help grow our economy, to establish their businesses, to create jobs, and contribute to the vitality of our region. Fostering local educational programs for the creatives of tomorrow is also something we take very seriously. We have partnered with the GMC Talent Dividend and together hope to bring a 1 percentage point increase in educational attainment throughout the region. Just that 1% increase, by the way, would bring a $1.5 billion return in economic benefits as measured by increases in personal income. Now, the other, yes, that's pretty significant growth. The other important piece of this is that we must reinstate the arts as a high school graduation requirement. You know, school boards across the region will tell you we can't afford arts education in the high schools. Our industry cannot afford to have kids coming out of high school without an arts education. Our economy really depends upon it. Currently, a project stemming from Creativity Works by Sprinkler is working in tandem with the UWM Peck School of the Arts to form a business incubator and provide internships for students in the field. Projects such as this is a very good example of not only providing students with opportunities to gain experience in the field, but it's also providing some very fresh insights to this company, so it's a real win-win. Let's talk to strengthening the creative industries infrastructure, another one of our strategies. We want to do this by providing local companies ways of finding support in times that they're unsure of where to take their business. This is particularly true about nonprofit organizations today. So it's important we establish a program to develop sustainable business models for both for-profits and not-for-profit businesses with a focus on earned revenue. A self-assessment toolkit is an example of that. We'll develop that for organizations to periodically assess their capacity to adopt a more viable business model. And if companies need additional help, we'll establish a formalized loaned executive program that would bring in senior financial and marketing executives from local successful businesses to work on business modeling. And for additional support, we can establish local, regional, and state level offices of creative industries to support the development of a strong creative economy. And again, Mayor Barrett was here. He's going to talk more about this in coming weeks. He said he wants to be at the front of the parade. And so the city of Milwaukee can be the first in line in creating an office of creative industries to support our local efforts. So there are a couple projects that are already in progress that we think we should be talking about supporting as part of our efforts because they do demonstrate nonprofits trying to achieve financial self-reliance. The first, of course, is that under Dennis Bueller's leadership, the Harmony Initiative, which is a very creative collaboration with the Milwaukee Ballet and with the UWM Peck School of the Arts and the Medical College Sports Medicine Clinic. We've heard a lot about that. It is a very creative project that will create a new vision for Milwaukee's performing arts and education community by creating a new business model. And the new model better addresses funders' and audiences' needs while allowing the city to utilize its creative community as a force for civic engagement and economic development. And the second is closer to home. The Marcus Center is as a nonprofit has a goal of achieving financial self-reliance through real estate redevelopment, through the redevelopment of our parking structure site. So let's then turn to establishing creative industry councils. We believe that this will drive growth and collaboration throughout the industry and to integrate these various industries. So the Cultural Alliance of Greater Milwaukee will continue to deepen the creative industries profile and manage the implementation of a Creativity Works strategy. And some of you know about this. The Alliance has agreed to transition its own business plan and its business model to broaden its scope to serve all creative industries and design and implement a strategic plan. So we're putting the organizational infrastructure in place to carry this initiative forward. Creativity Works will become a hub for resources, for services, and communication in order to develop a growing and sustainable creative industries sector. Individual segment councils will be established to incubate business. a regional design council, a film and media council, a cultural council, which is made up of performing arts and visual arts and our heritage institutions, with the vision of establishing these as centers of excellence across the region. Each council would start with the research data that we've generated and have extensive profile information at hand, and then the framework for development provided in the full Mount Auburn report. And key industry leaders will be sought to head all of these councils. The first one we are already getting underway with the Greater Milwaukee Committee is the Milwaukee 7 Design Council. And we appreciate Rich Muson's leadership in this, who, as you know, is the founder of the Milwaukee Water Council, in helping us get this initiative underway. So as you can see, as we bring this to a close, the study won't die on the vine. We've already got seeds planted to be able to grow the creative industries, building on the strong foundation that we have. And this will be an important economic driver for our region in the future. Now, I want to touch, just as we close, and before you have a chance to ask some questions, to talk about the funders who made it possible for us to get here. They took a leap of faith at the very beginning, and we are indebted to their confidence and their commitment. And as you can see, we had 2 very significant federal grants. And we have to do a shout out to Kate Romlo, if she's still here, from the State Department of Commerce. Talk about creativity. Pull her and Christine aside, and they'll talk to you about the creative way in which they were able to come up with the application to be able to get these funds, this Economic Development Administration grant. It was a very, very challenging but creative process to make it happen. She and Kate was instrumental in guiding us in the EDA process, and we do have to say, without whom we would never be where we are today. So the next slide, let's turn just briefly to thanking all of our funders. Again, these are organizations that were, and funders that were with us at the very beginning, doing groundbreaking support for us. They saw the potential, they took the leap of faith, and brought us to where we are here today. So let's give them a round of applause. Now, you do have an executive summary to take away, and the full report and public executive summary will be available on our website tomorrow. And we know you're going to want to read it, so make sure you take one of these markers with you, because you're going to want to read it and highlight it and keep going back to it as we go forward. So with that, I think we're going to open it to questions. There are mics around here. And Christine, are you going to facilitate the Q&A? Or? Okay, you're going to do it. So thank you all for being here tonight. Thanks for your participation.
If we could bring up the lights a little bit, there are 2 mics. There's one here in the table area, and there's one back at the start of the chairs. If anybody has any questions for any of the team, whoever you've got your question for. Or if there are no questions, we'll keep going.
I'll be brave for you, Christine.
Okay, thanks, Barbara.
What is the strategy, and what do you think the obstacles are to, we had a lot of applause about high school education in the arts, and many of us in this room began our careers in our high school and elementary schools where we had the arts. What's the best strategy, and what can we do to help facilitate making that go forward?
I wish I had the answer for that, Barbara. I'm not sure, but it's one of the things that we need to work on, and we're making those conversations happen. I think it's going to be a challenging one. I certainly think I've heard, and I think others in this room have heard, the superintendent of MPS talk about the importance of a well-rounded education, including the arts. We actually are in the process of concluding a study that's in a tandem with this, with UWM Center for Urban Initiatives and Resources, with research, with support from Northwestern Mutual Foundation. We're doing a snapshot of all of our K-12 arts and creative education around the region. So at least we'll have an understanding of what's happening, where the gaps might be. That report will be due out at the end of the month. And then I think as we move forward, we'll have some information with which to figure out the best way to move forward. But I assure you, there'll be plenty of opportunity through the web-based networking system and others to have your input and have your involvement in it. I was pleased to hear that kind of support for that comment. Yes.
I started my arts background in the wonderful schools of Milwaukee County, and I am still striving to be a performing artist, and I'm wondering, I'm speaking on behalf of Organic Arts, who was one of the host tables tonight, when the disparity between the performing artists and the visual artists and industry will start to narrow. While we talk about fair trade, many performing artists and visual artists can't even get an hourly wage like someone working at Harley-Davidson would get. And we're expected to donate our services time and time again, where a factory worker or a dentist would never be asked that question.
I understand. Thank you for the question. It's a fair one. I've been in the arts world for a long time and have lived with the circumstances you're talking about. Frankly, it was one of the motivations for doing this work. It's one of the motivations why a nonprofit art service organization took on the creative industries. Because if we had just come across with a cultural planning, everybody would have said, oh, it's just another way to support the nonprofit arts. And we wanted to raise it up into a new level and a broader level and raise the consciousness around the community for what we had here. So now I think we've got the beginning of a new conversation. And now it's up to us to take advantage of that new conversation so that that doesn't exist 5 years down the road. Other?
Hi, Christy.
Hi, Johnny.
I actually was really interested in the coalition, the councils that you mentioned setting up, the cultural council and the media and film council as a member of the media especially. And I was wondering if you had any more insight on how you envision those working, if those are tangible plans, and what kind of role you see them playing in establishing the creative industries as an economic engine for the region.
Well, we think they're critical to integrating the creative industries by bringing all of those segments together under around a hub of creative services. How we're going to do that, we don't know yet, other than we think the model for the Water Council with industry leaders and with bringing in both the support systems, academia, the funding support systems, as well as all the various businesses within those areas make all the difference in the world. So we're going to use that model, and we're starting with the Design Council because it's 46% and it's 59% of all of our wages, and we'll translate that model to the others. And we'll be seeking all of you that are in these areas to help us form how those councils work. So we're working on it with you. We're co-creating. Mr. Matt.
Hello. Which one is on here? I'm not classified as a creative in the list that was up there, but my business, I have a small business, and we benefit greatly from collaboration with creatives and benefit personally also from having the creative industries flourish. So how does a small business go about participating in this initiative and helping to grow the creative industries?
Well, the first opportunity to get involved is going to be connecting to the website that you and the rest on your team with Sprinkler are developing with us now. I'll show you a little bit of that in a minute. So the first thing to do is to really get connected and to find ways to make sure that if you're a creative business or you have a creative resource, that you're on the website. If you're looking for creative resources, you're in the job bank. If you want to connect with other people, events like this, that you sign up for the networking events. And as we go along, we'll figure out the best ways to move it forward because we're just getting going. So I think there's a lot more opportunity. And also, to make a point, as Jill just reminded me, the tactics that we've shared tonight are really just the tip of the iceberg. We've got a full action plan that we're developing. We're actually going to make sure that we've got a long-term strategic plan. Everybody's going to have an opportunity to participate in the development of that if you want it. And so as we move it forward, we're really just at the beginning of getting it going. Jim.
Christine, thank you. I just want to let everyone know here that we had a bridge from the beginning, from our Create Camp that we did in Delavan, where we had to throw our Blackberries and our phones away, and it was a tough thing, but we had a group. It's come so far, and I think our biggest concern has been how to reach a lot of the fine artists and the musicians and a lot of people and connect back. But I just want to applaud the fact that through this whole generation of activity, The education components have come together. There are support systems for being entrepreneurial and helping to grow. We have support systems between MATC, UWM, Marquette. The deans are sitting together, the teachers are sitting together, the professors are coming together, and we're helping to bridge this so that if you need those support services, you connect with the site, because we're manifesting a lot that hasn't been there before, and it's bringing a lot of us together. You just have to go to the site and connect and advise and give us input, and because it's growing so big. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. You know, one of the things I learned from Mount Auburn and the work they've done around the country is that we don't have the answers starting. We felt it was, actually Mount Auburn said to us, don't just do the report and then figure out what to do next. Start doing something, start implementing. So the website's on its way, the Creatives in Residence is on its way, the council's on its way. And what we've learned by talking to other communities that have done this, you just have to start the starting. Because as people start, as Jim said, as people start to learn to who each other are and start talking to each other, connections start to be made and things start to grow. So we're starting the starting. Yes.
Thank you for starting the starting. I just wanted to point out that creativity knows no race, no income, and no age. And I really loved the high school requirement for art, but since middle school is where we're feeling most of our children and that's where the dropout rates occur, how can we bring creativity into our educational system as part of our foundation as a city and as a region?
Good question. Thank you. I think part of it is changing the conversation to not just talk about arts education, but talk about creativity education. I think the conversation needs to be a broader conversation to get the attention. Okay, I think what we'll do is keep moving because we got a couple of other things to show you. As Paul mentioned, we want to be the Midwest's best creative hub. We want to be one of the top 5 in the nation. We want to build on our creative assets. We want to reach new heights of excellence. And we think integrating the talents of everybody in this room and the thousands of people that are around the 7-county region, we've got a chance to do that. I want to tell you a quick story that Jill and Paul and I heard in Mount Auburn early on. We mentioned, Paul mentioned Rich Musen's support of this, and as a co-chair of the Water Council, he's been instrumental in helping us, along with Julia, understand how to put a council together. And when we were first chatting with him about this project almost a year ago now, he said, you know, he said, we're a 100-plus-year-old company, and we've just made water meters, and we put out gray water meters and never thought twice about it. But we've recently decided maybe we need to be a little bit more competitive, and maybe we need a little bit more design element. So I think we should hire a product design firm. And he said, and we did that. He said, but you know, I don't know whether that firm was LA, Chicago, New York. We don't know where it came from. He said, I bet you're going to tell me we could have found somebody here. And I said, you bet we're going to tell you could have found somebody here. And more importantly, we're going to connect you to those people, and we're going to connect the community to each other so you don't have to go outside. We'd rather sell our business here to all of you outside in the nation and the region and the world so that we can bring it back here. So, what's coming up? We've got a new website that's going to be launched in March by Sprinkler and team, and that website is going to have a number of major features. It's going to have profiles as an individual, as a company. You're seeing kind of the between alpha and beta stage here at the moment. It's going to have job postings. It's going to be a job bank. It's going to have all of our events and our networking activities. You'll be able to post what's going on in your area. It's going to have news. Here's a little bit of a close-up of what it's going to be looking like. Here's how it would be developing a profile. You're going to be able to build your individual profile and or your company profile with all the information, links that you'd have to your website, videos, biographies, etc. Here's a little bit of a close-up. This is our Laura Lossman, one of our staff, in her, just looking terrific here. And she put herself up as a role model here. So this is the level of capacity you're going to be able to see. So you're going to be able to search for it any which way. You're going to find colleagues of yours. You're going to find people that have resources and services that can connect with you. You'll be able to put projects up to say that we're looking for help with this project or we want to collaborate on something. You'll also be able to post jobs, and you'll be able to put them on a job bank in lots of different detail. You'll have auditions, calls for creatives, whatever it is that you're looking for, you'll be able to post on the site. Here's another example of what it's going to look like interactive. So that's coming up. The Cultural Alliance staff, I've got to make a really huge shout out for. Shira, if you could stand, Laurel Osman, Denise in the back. It's a great team. This project ended up, we asked Mount Auburn in the beginning, how much resource do you need and how much time do you think we'll have to put into this? Well, triple it. You know, that's about what all of this took. But it's been worth every minute, and this team has really put it together well. We've completed it on time and under budget. We've raised all the funds ourselves, and we're really, really proud of what we pulled together with this team. And I also need to give a shout out to our two working co-chairs, Jill Moran and Paul Matthews. They have day jobs that are just as demanding as this project has been, and they've been there every single minute. They've been champions all along the way. We couldn't have done it without them. The partnership with the GMC and their strategic support, and Jill originally starting with the quality of life, we couldn't be here without all of that. It's been a critical collaboration. It's been an example of a partnership and a collaboration that can take something to new heights. So thank you, Jill and Paul, from all of us for all of your work. So what's next? A call to action. We would ask you to support our activities. We currently, the website, creativityworksmke.com, is in your executive summary. That website is up and running. It will be transitioned, hopefully by mid-March. But we invite you to join us. If you're not on our e-communications, please do. You'll learn everything that's going on. We can keep you up to date, and you can tell us what's going on for you as well. We're going to be going back to all of the counties and hosting roundtables like we did when we did the original research, and going back out and talking to all those folks and saying, here's where we are. What would you prioritize? What do you think about the direction we're going? How can we help you build a networking? How can we help you do what you want to do with your creative industries in your county? Every economic development manager from all of the counties was sitting on our planning committee. They're looking for ways to implement it. So for those of you that don't live in Milwaukee County and come from any one of the other 6 counties, we're going to come back and we're going to talk to you about how we can help you and how we can best implement this for you. As has been mentioned, we're going to be launching a new business and transitioning our business into a new model. We will hopefully announce that in the middle of March. We have a board transition team chaired by Bill Forescu from the Florentine Opera to do that. And then we're going to be hosting another event in March, so watch for our launch event where we'll launch that website and we'll launch the new business model, and we'll take any opportunity to network that we possibly can. I also want to, before we close, give a shout out to Made in Milwaukee and all their musicians. You'll be hearing from Evan Christian in a moment. He's been provided to us by Chuck Watson and Made in Milwaukee, and that's an organization, another organization dedicated to the promotion and support of live Milwaukee musicians. We've really worked hard to showcase what we have here throughout this event. If you'd like to tell your story about how you're a part of or how you care about and connect to the creative industries, Kyle and Flippy Levin are going around, and maybe some of you he's spoken to or you've had a little video. Kyle, where are you? So we can, there's Kyle. So if you want to tell your story, we're going to put it on the website. Please grab something to drink and do tell the story. And finally, I'd like to finish with a quote from the Mount Auburn report that I think is apropos. Southeast Wisconsin's economy and prosperity will depend less on how much it produces and more on what it produces. Less on its cost of living and more on its quality of living. Less on its workers' skills and more on its people's talents. Less on corporate identities and more on entrepreneurial energies. So let's have a chance to meet people we don't know. Thank you for being here, and let's move forward.